2 weeks to Missouri's all-important primary season. We're going to continue our debate series today, and I want to get right into it. We'll start with Representative Andrew Koenig from the St. Louis area. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Former Representative Rick Stream from here in St. Louis area. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Scott.
I want to thank both of you for being here. And Rick, I want to start with you.
Okay.
I want to jump right into it. You've been a state legislator, you ran for county executive. You're running for the state senate. Obviously, you can have a big impact on state policy. What's the one priority that you're going to take to Jeff City with you?
Well, I think it's jobs. Jobs. That's what people are concerned about, the most, economic development. We've got to create a climate where business can grow. And right now, we don't have that climate in St. Louis County or the state or the country, of course. I think the federal government is really crushing small and medium-sized businesses with their rules and regulations. So we have to create a climate where taxes are low, where healthcare costs are low, and where unnecessary rules and regulations are eliminated so that the great entrepreneurial spirit of Americans can
At the state level, is it taxes, is it tort reform? What is the thing that could make jobs grow?
Well, I think it's all of that. We have to keep taxes low. There are rules and regulations at the state level that can be eliminated because they're unnecessary and they're just squashing job growth.
Educating, there is a palatable sense in St. Louis. Talk to somebody from Kansas City right now, they're pumped. They'll tell you all the 20 things that are going well. Part of it's sports, but it's really, I mean, sports are a garnishment. There's something on the, except for the Cardinals, obviously. But there's a different feel in St. Louis. What is your top priority?
Well, the top priority is always going to be the economy. There's no question jobs. If you don't have a job, it's bad. And so we need to make Missouri a good place to do business. There's not a silver bullet, but it comes down to tax code, employment law, education. These things are all important. I think the income tax cut that I passed, the first one in 93 years, is a good first step, but we need all the pieces.
What is the top thing, though? I mean, if you're a state senator, you can impact policy. Being a House member takes a lot of consensus building. A senator can stop stuff. If you could do one thing, what would it be?
Well, corporate welfare is also another thing that interferes in the free market. It kind of squashes small business when the elite get those special breaks. And what we need is a government that is neutral, and so we can have low tax rates, so that we let the free market work.
So you've been a legislator. You've served in Jefferson City. I always think it's fashionable now for some folks to knock that. But I think there's a lot of good things that happen at the state capitol. I want to ask you, what is one thing you're the most proud of your time in Jeff City?
Well, I'm gonna name two. The two things: one, the first income tax cut in 93 years, and this year we passed the first TIF reform bill. What we have is $5.8 billion in taxpayer subsidies to private enterprise through the use of tax increment financing. And what that does is it shuffles Walmarts around St. Louis County, but it does nothing to actually create jobs. And it's not fair to that business that small business who used his own money to build his own building, and then someone comes in and moves next to him and puts him out of business on taxpayer dime.
Let's drill down on the tax cut. It didn't kick in this year, but it wasn't easy to pass. I mean, you had people that had to flip votes from year to year. How did you make that happen?
Well, it was a tough fight. That bill, we had to pull that bill out of the grave several times. On the bill previously, actually when it came to my committee, it was actually a 6-6 tie. And we had to flip. That's where the trigger came into place.
Do you have to do horse trading on that? Do you have to make a deal to get folks on other? I mean, there's a skill to legislating. Did you have to apply that to make that happen?
So what we did is we put. That's where the trigger came from. That in that first bill, $100 million trigger. So the tax cut would only get implemented if state revenues go up, because the person that sat on my committee was concerned if state revenue went down.
Sure. Representative Stream, I want to ask you, you were in Jeff City for a full term in the House, the full 8. What's the one thing you're the most proud of in Jeff City?
Well, I think it has to be the budget. As Vice Chairman and Chairman of the budget, we passed a balanced budget every year. Without a tax increase, we are one of only 7 states to have a AAA bond rating. And we managed to fund the priorities that are, I think, move the state forward. For instance, education. We did increase funding for education because we need to have educated kids coming through our system. And that was, to me, that's the top priority of what I did while I was in the legislature.
Last question. Whenever you go to your websites, whenever you look at your things you hand out, I happen to live in the district now. some, so I get to see some of the things that go on. It looks like you're very similar. What's something that sets you apart in this race as the person Republicans should nominate?
Well, I've got a lifetime of leadership. I was commissioned a naval officer back in 1972. So I've got 44 years of leadership, not only in the Navy, but in the private sector, in the public sector. And I think that's important because I've worked in both sides. I didn't get into this business of politics until I was 57. So I had a lifetime of leadership and experience. As a volunteer, I was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by my Chamber of Commerce last year for 50 years of volunteer service in my community. So I've not only been active in the business side, but also in the volunteer side too.
Kenny, when you see the things, your websites, your social media, a lot of similarities. What sets you apart as the person Republicans should put up in November?
Well, I believe it's important to elect constitutional conservatives. And what you find, I have a really strong record. There's 4 conservative groups out there, and I got an A rating from every single group, every year, every time. And I'm also the only candidate endorsed by Missouri Right to Life. There's no question that life is important. When you peer inside the womb, life does exist. And so I think life issues are extremely important as well.
Representative Caney, Representative Stream, thank you for coming in, sharing your views on This Week in Missouri Politics. I want everybody that enjoyed this to go to MissouriTimes.com to watch TWMP Overtime. We're going to continue this debate there right after the show. Go to MissouriTimes.com, and we'll pick the debate up for the last 3 questions with that. But we'll leave you, come back after the break with our opinion maker panel, but we'll leave you with this week's leading Missouri economic indicators.
When I built my business, fighting government regulators was the difference between folks having jobs or not. We succeeded and created good-paying Missouri jobs.
John Bruner, U.S. Marine, businessman, constitutional conservative.
We will succeed in bringing jobs and opportunity back to Missouri because I know how to do it and I've done it. And unlike politicians, I can't be bought. I will be guided by my faith, the Constitution, and we the people.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Conservative Kurt Schaefer, the only trusted prosecutor for Attorney General.
You know Josh Hawley worked for the American Taliban, but court records show Hawley also worked for the People's Mujahideen of Iran. The Mujahideen killed American soldiers, assassinated civilians, and bombed the American embassy. Still, Josh Hawley fought to remove these Islamic radicals from the terror list. Condoleezza Rice called the Mujahideen terrorists. Josh Hawley called them clients.
Welcome back to our Opinion Maker panel. 2 weeks out from the primary, you know it's going to be hot. So we brought in David Turner, Democratic Party operative. Glad to have you back, sir.
Nice to be here.
J.P. Johnson, first time on the show, Communications Special Assistant to Mayor Slay. Glad to have you here, sir. Welcome this week.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
David Barclage, Oracle of the Republican Party, multiple times on the show. Very glad to have you back, sir. Person why we have the Barclage rule for potty mouse.
And I brought my notes.
last time that got hairy. Representative Wieben, glad to have you on, sir. Glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
Dave, let's start with you. You worked with the Stream campaign,
Yes, I did.
as a ton of Republican campaigns here in the state. I thought the debate was substantive and good and respectful. Two professionals.
You know, look, Rick Stream is that he's old school. You know, he was raised, he lost his father at a young age. He had to go to work. The family had to support themselves. He went to the Navy. He had to send his paycheck back home. Sort of that old school. And I think he in the legislature was always sort of a guy, a go-to guy for leadership. And he was really, during one of the toughest budget times, a guy who managed the state budget, reduced taxes, raised spending for education, and really did a subsidy. I think he did really good. I'm going to make a point, though, because, and this is something both of us talked about the last time on the show, is that we tried to warn politicians not to misconstrue records. And I've got this piece, I've got actual graphics here. This is a mail piece Andrew Koenig just put out, and it says that Rick Stream, that you're going to face higher taxes on Rick Stream because he raised your taxes. Well, what they're talking about is Rick Stream voted for a House joint resolution to put on the ballot a transportation tax. He didn't raise anybody's taxes, but that's the kind of campaign Koenig's running. The other thing Koenig did, Koenig's got all this stop corporate welfare out there, and the fact is that he voted for corporate welfare for Ford Company, for Paul McKee, for NCAA, just like he voted to raise taxes.
That's a lot
but
of fine print. And I mean, campaigns are rough, but I thought Andrew did a good job, and I think he did raise his profile when he passed the TIF bill, right? I mean, that was something to hang his hat on.
Certainly, Andrew, you know, he worked hard this year to put forth a TIF bill, and that did get through, and that was a good bipartisan bill, actually, that you know, went through the legislature. And you know, certainly, you know, as a representative, you know, we vote on a lot of bills, and sometimes the devil's in the details, and sometimes you get to vote for things that there's 90% good and maybe 10% bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we vote on a lot of budget bills that unfortunately sometimes we have to vote for it because we have to balance the budget, and there's things in there that I don't care for, but overall it's a good bill. And
But that was his first bill after
you're right.
8 years. And you have Rick Stream, who every year made a substantive impact in the legislature. So I hope the voters will go for the person who will make the biggest difference.
I think it's really an interesting thing. You mentioned old school. You know, Andrew Koenig's more of a new school guy. An interesting district to see when you compare those two philosophies, who wins. You know, and you deal with that in St. Charles County, really different types of Republicans running. It'd be an interesting race.
Well, you know, I've only known Andrew for 2 years. I've known, you know, Rick for probably maybe 6 or 7 years. And, you know, Rick is certainly a more experienced legislator, a more experienced politician, has been around for many, many years. And, you know, he's done a good job. I think he was a good budget chair. And, you know, he has name ID that's much higher than Andrew's, and I think that's certainly going to be very beneficial to him in this election. So elections are always made up of a lot of factors, and that's one of them, name ID and you know, those kind of things.
David Turner, when these districts were drawn in St. Louis County, this was the one district that compacted the Republicans into it. Sure. Some deals were cut. Looks like it's the one that Democrats have a hard time competing in. Sure. From what you saw there, is there one you'd rather not run against?
You know, I think you pointed out there's a different generational divide in terms of how people are approaching politics. I find that interesting within the Republican Party. Certainly the professionalism that was exuded in that debate compared to what we're seeing in the gubernatorial race is a stark contrast. And I think that is what is most noteworthy to me. Would I pick one over the other? Not really. I think both have weaknesses, both have strengths. I think Democrats can play against both. But I do think that what I noticed is that there was a serious amount of professionalism that is frankly lacking in the gubernatorial race.
Maybe Johnson, when you look at these two guys, they look like they're both professionals. They're both experienced legislators, different schools and philosophies. Yeah. What'd you think?
Well, the one thing I like in politics is civility. We don't see enough of it. Certainly what David was talking about.
We saw some today.
Exactly. And I think the more we get back to the old school retail politics where we're talking to one another, where we're actually shaking hands, we're going out, we're having a drink with one another, we can talk about policies and we can disagree without being disagreeable. I think you actually give the people choice. And as long as we have politicians that are putting the people first and ensuring that they actually conduct themselves with the necessary decorum to give people an actual option in terms of who's going to, you know, represent their values, I think that's important. And so for me, as a millennial, that's what I want to see going forward.
Are you getting tired of the fact, I mean, this guy comes out, Koenig, and says, stop corporate welfare, yada, yada, yada. yet he's voted for it again and again. He was criticizing Mike Parsons just a couple weeks ago for voting for it, yet he's voted for it again and again. I mean, there has to be a line of sort of honest politics, though. I mean, but it's just getting so we're passing that fine line, and I think in this campaign, that was my point for bringing it up. It's way past that fine line. There are issues you can hit people on, but hitting people for doing the same thing that you're doing, and then acting like that, you're appalled by their actions, that's just not right.
In this election cycle, though, I think we've heard far worse.
No, you're right about that. And it will get worse.
Precisely. Precisely.
David, you keyed on this a little bit with the governor's race. Missouri Republican primary is hot as any race anywhere in the country. Yeah. If you like politics, it's like a feature film coming out. As it winds down, is there a candidate sitting on the other side that you don't want to see come out?
No, I think all four, frankly, are weak candidates, and Chris Koster is clearly the strongest candidate that's going to take on anybody in the fall. The fact of the matter is, you have one candidate who only knows two words, seemingly, Navy SEAL, and says he's going to clean up corruption in Jefferson City, and yet he takes a $2 million...
I mean, you're talking about John, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A $2 million untraceable check, takes $1 million from a man who is accused of being a sex slave owner, one of the biggest... hedge fund failures in the history of the country, in Steve Cohen, and a guy who put a gun to his wife's head. I mean, I think you have serious questions with that candidate. Then you have John Brunner, who certainly seems like a nice man, seems like a well-liked guy in the Republican Party, but there's no dynamism there. He doesn't present himself well, I think, and I think that's a problem there. And then, frankly, unfortunately, Peter Kinder, who has got a lot of experience, and same with Catherine Hanaway, seem to be fading from the pack. So it would be interesting to see what plays out. But no, I'm not worried about any of them. I think Chris Koster is a much stronger candidate than all four.
J.B. Johnson, you're familiar with at least one candidate. Eric Greitens endorsed your boss, Mayor Slay, not too long ago. So
I appreciate that.
Where do you see it? Do you think, where does Slay come out in this race?
He's clearly not endorsing any of the Republican candidates for governor.
He's not returning the favor? What's up with
full
that?
disclosure. What I'll say, and I'm not going to go as hard as David, but I think Chris Koster's in a good position. I think the options on the Republican side are unfortunate. For me, the fact that Peter Kinder is not presenting himself as the heir apparent to the office, I think that's an issue for him. And certainly, given the fact that he's faded, I think you kind of sense where the Republican Party in Missouri is going. Catherine Hanaway, you would think that an experienced woman would be able to kind of take the mantle and usher in this new conservatism, and she's not been able to do it. And as it pertains to Eric and John, I think the feud that initially kind of sparked what we've seen in terms of the lack of civility in the race, I think that was part and parcel of what people can't stand about our politics, can't stand about our politicians. And you would think Eric would be able to present himself in a way, given his background as someone who is not a politician, similar to what Donald Trump has been saying, and be able to actually reach beyond the typical political class.
He stood up for LGBT rights.
Yeah, he did after it was pretty. He did after it was pretty clear that
I think credit where credit's due. That was a tough decision to make.
It was, and I'm not saying that he didn't do the right thing, but I'm just saying I think he did the right thing, probably for the wrong reasons, and I think he came a little late in the game.
I mean, Representative, I don't know. I thought when Eric Greitens stood up against Senator Onder and some of the folks on the religious right, that wasn't an easy stance to take.
Absolutely not. I was surprised he did it, given that a good portion of the party is very conservative and certainly supports that.
I forgot who gave him money, a transgender general. So,
but maybe that's who. Maybe that's who he is, though. I mean, I don't know.
But from a political standpoint, I'm surprised he would come out and make that position. Take that position. But as far as our candidates are concerned, we have four candidates. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, and just like Chris Koster has his strengths and weaknesses, which will be brought to attention once we get into the general election. Right now, the Republicans just got to get past this primary. We got to get our best candidate picked, and once we get that candidate, then we can go to work in trying to get back the governor's seat.
David Bartlett, I know you're the chief guy with the Brunner campaign, and when you look at the race, it seems like I saw some polling recently that all four of them could win. Brunner and Greitens may be a step ahead of the other two.
Yeah, Brunner is leading the polls, but I think that's a reflection of. I think you said it right. He's not flash. He's a builder. I think the guy that blows up things is Eric Greitens, and I think he blows up the truth. I think he blows up a lot of things, and people got to wonder why all these hedge fund managers and other people are investing who've never been in Missouri, other than the fact that they may want to raid or steal our pension funds. So I think we have to really seriously look at a guy who is unknown. You know, he makes claims about his charity that are false. His overhead, he has way understated that. He has taken a huge payroll out of it. He has paved his pocket by having the charity buy his books, all kinds of little deals and sort of things that he's done that I think that if the people had a little more time to find out who this guy really is, they would realize that he's not ready for prime time. I think John Brunner is. He's more lower key. He's more get it done. He's more, you know, being part of a team and things like that. And I think that's its strength, and I think he's likability. But I think Brunner ends up winning it.
Let's ask, according to Eric Greitens, corrupt Jefferson City insider John Wieman. There was something that
apparently
I saw.
we're all corrupt in Jefferson City.
There you go.
I keep trying to explain to people that there's a few bad apples, but for the most part, there's a lot of good.
The Post-Dispatch and newcomers of the party, I think, are not fans. There was something I saw that might have been the most unethical legal thing I've seen in politics. There was the largest contribution ever to a Missouri candidate came from a source, and we'll never know who. You can dog people out for taking money from a David Humphreys, a Rex Singfield, a person that had a sex slave or held a gun to his wife. All those things, if you care, which I'm not sure if people do, but if you care, you can find out. We'll never know. Is there not, would you support, people talk about ethics, a lot of it's debatable. That to me is almost undebatably wrong. Would you support a bill to ban those contributions to Missouri campaigns?
I'm in favor of transparency. I've always been in favor of transparency.
Yeah.
When we had this whole ethics discussion we had last year about we were going to pass all these ethics bills, my biggest thing was we need to focus on transparency because that will solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Missouri has pretty good transparency
Missouri does.
rules right now. At the federal level, you know, you can put money into a PAC and you can hide money very easily. At the state level, people can make donations to 501c4s or whatever it is, the type of entity you can that's a PAC, political PAC, and money can be camouflaged or hidden in those PACs. You get into the debate as to protecting the integrity of that organization, that PAC, as far as the.
But you can't keep them from giving straight cash contributions to Missouri campaigns, right?
Well, certainly can look at it, but I don't know if legally we can do that. That's the problem. I think that's been addressed before. Was trying to get those PACs to disclose.
You hit one of the fundamental
donors.
core issues here is that Brunner is the only candidate who's not taken that kind of contribution because he is a self-funder. He can't be bought. And that is a fundamental difference in this election, that you've got a guy who's going to go down there who's going to owe no one. And I think that's important because I think we see special interests derailing this. But I'll stand up for Humphreys and for Rex. They have given not only into politics but into the community for years. They've been established. You know what they want, which is little to nothing. Rex, I don't know one thing David Humphreys has asked for. And Rex Singfield has a few specific things, policy things that aren't necessarily focused towards him. At least you can sort of excuse those contributions. But the kind of money that Eric Greitens has come in.
He's one of the largest funders of the Democratic Party, too.
Well, that's true. He's an equal opportunity employer.
He mentioned Courtney Curtis, Representative Curtis's biggest fundraiser, David Humphreys. But at least you know that David Humphreys cut a big check to Democratic Representative Curtis. Is that not something that Democrats would support? You can. The state had before said you can't take contributions from certain entities, certain types of entities. Is there not a way to keep the federal PACs from that? They're going to run ads, right? But is there not a way to keep them from giving money right to candidate committees?
I think, both sides of the aisle agree. Transparency is the best path forward for Missouri. You want to make sure that people know where the money's coming from. I think Missouri has a pretty good, institution in terms of how that works. But the problem is you have a federal system that has become more and more Wild West. And how do you fix that? Well, it's going to require federal legislation, in my opinion. So, yeah, sure, Democrats would love to support that. I think Democrats nationally and even locally have supported campaign finance reform, and that's something that I think would be a bipartisan bill you could see.
J.B. Johnson, does anybody care where these guys get their money from, though, at the end of the day?
I think if you ask Bernie Sanders supporters, they would care. I think if you ask Donald Trump supporters, actually, they would care. I think a lot of people care. I think money in politics is becoming more of a problem than it used to be. The simple fact that Ted Cruz could raise almost $38 million in a super PAC from 3 people, I think that's an issue. I think too few entities with the ability to give large sums of money to candidates, I think is bad practice. And I think we need to do something about it.
So speaking of, the conventions were this week, presidential race heating up almost officially. So Hillary Clinton flies into Cleveland next week. just ahead of the FBI, probably on a Goldman Sachs funded plane. Is it hard? I mean, look, I got to say, when Romney was running, it was hard to be excited. Is it just hard to be excited?
I think, well, no, because you're making history with Hillary Clinton. Democrats are excited to have, nominate the first. Excuse me?
The most boring candidate ever.
You know what? You can say what you want, but just like Mr. Barklage talked about his guy, John Brunner, a builder, a worker, someone with a record of accomplishment. Hillary Clinton's the same thing. She is someone who gets in the nuts and bolts and it works hard, finds policy solutions, likes to work across the aisle to get things done, and I think that's what she's been running on. You see a stark contrast to Donald Trump in that convention, which was clearly a party divided, and a candidate who seemingly only knows one volume level in terms of how he gives a speech. So,
J.B. Johnson, I've never heard of Hillary Clinton having a real job. I've never seen her build anything. I think if you go to Syria, Iraq, all over the globe, there hasn't been a lot built. I mean,
what's your definition of a real job? So,
not a government job.
Children's Defense Fund. She was actually on the Watergate panel, I believe, before she was 30 years old.
Like a job where you built something in the private sector.
Partner at the Rose Law Firm throughout the 80s. She actually made more money than Bill Clinton was ever.
She's pretty good at destroying documents.
You want to come and sit over here?
Yeah,
you want to sit over here? You're leaving him alone.
So $100 million, let me just make this point, $100 million targeting the Clinton family throughout the 1990s, and the only thing they found was that the president had a misdeed in his personal life. I think if Republicans want to continue to attack Hillary Clinton, they do that at their own peril.
What night does Loretta Lynch and Comey speak? You've got to be, coming out of the convention, do you think Republicans are, I saw people get united about thinking Ted Cruz was classless.
Well, I'm not going to beat up on Ted Cruz because I was supporting Ted Cruz in the primary, but now that he is no longer the candidate that's going to be moving forward, I'm going to support Donald Trump, and I think the party's getting united. It's not 100%. We still have a lot of work to do to get to that point, but we're well on our way to getting fully
You're a
united.
businessman. I mean, you're a legislator now, but you're still a businessman. You were a businessman. You've built things. You actually paid for Hillary Clinton to do all the wonderful things she did with her taxes. Because she's worked for the government. Don't you have some kinship with a Donald Trump? Can't you see his candidacy as something that, if you actually are on the business end of that you can respect? The guy that signs the front of a paycheck, not the back.
Absolutely. Donald is someone that we all would respect from a pure standpoint of being able to build something from almost nothing and grow a business. I have a lot of respect for people who start businesses and grow them, and especially to the level
as well. Yeah.
Well,
Some businesses go bankrupt,
there's a lot of people that have that have been bankrupt before and turn around and learn from their failures and have become successful. That's what's great about America. Come on, that's what's great about America.
He lost money running a casino. That's a pretty.
But that's what's great about America. You can fail and then you can come back and be successful.
One way to never go bankrupt is work for the government. If they want money, they just get guns out and take it from you.
Donald Trump is leading. Donald Trump is leading Missouri.
There's lots of people
There's not a presidential campaign in Missouri. Donald may be at double digits at this point, and some of our polling shows. The bottom line is, I think people get caught up in his style rather than his substance. His style is a New York style in your face, but you look at the reflection of his family, you look at the reflection of some of his acts, and the fact that where he's gotten in the tough New York stuff, he's done it because he's got substance.
And Dave Rutledge, we always love your style. Everybody's going to stay here. Come after you get done watching the show. Go to MissouriTimes.com, TWMP Overtime. We're going to finish up with predictions. You'll want to get them, write them down so you can make fun of these guys on Twitter later. Next week, Republican debate, final countdown. We'll see you then. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you in part by Sterling Bank.